As a result of the increased pressure and stakes that playoff series provide, there's an even bigger tendency for fans and media members to jump to conclusions about a particular team than at any other time in the season. Everything we're going to talk about today are simply things that I have seen thrown around either on NBA Twitter or various news articles that I wanted to take a look at and see how much truth each of them hold, as well as my opinion on how much of an overreaction they actually are. Let's go ahead and get started. First up, we have the idea that the Portland Trail Blazers, fresh off a shocking sweep at the hands of the Pelicans, should blow up their roster by trading away either Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum, as well as fire head coach Terry Stotts. This one needs to be broken up into two parts, so let's start with the roster. During the regular season, the Blazers' backcourt of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum was one of the most dynamic duos in the league, with Dame as a potential first-team All-NBA selection and CJ as his dependable and potent sidekick. The team rode that combination to a rather surprising third-place finish in the Western Conference, considering that they placed 8th and 5th in the conference rankings the past 2 years respectively. One of the biggest reasons for the Blazers' improvement this season was their newfound defensive prowess, posting a top 10 defensive rating in the regular season despite the glaring defensive weaknesses of their admittedly explosive backcourt. But as with many things during their first round series versus the Pelicans, the regular season success did not translate to the playoffs. Portland allowed over 114 points on average across the 4 games, which was only made even more disastrous by the lack of firepower their two biggest stars provided on the offensive end. Their struggles in the series has understandably brought up a lot of questions about whether the Blazers should trade away one of their talented offensive guards for a partner that's more stout on the defensive end. Versatility is everything in today's NBA, and building a team around two players that are such a liability on the defensive end might work fairly well in the regular season, but as we saw this year, is a huge issue when the playoffs come around. So to me, I would say that this isn't an overreaction, and if I was the Blazers, I would look into trading CJ McCollum for a more defensive-minded backcourt partner for Damian Lillard. To be clear, CJ is a great offensive player, so I wouldn't just give him away for nothing. But for a team that doesn't appear to be close to being a legit contender, and with a concerning salary cap situation that will surely only get worse with a number of key players set to hit free agency this summer, I would see what kind of options are out there for a younger, cheaper, and more defensive-minded guard to pair with Lillard. As for the second part relating to firing head coach Terry Stotts, I would ask fans to pump the brakes on that idea for a bit. I understand how badly the Blazers just got beat, and that obviously coaching has a large part to do with getting beaten as badly as they did, but I really admire the job Stotts has done in Portland. They have a history of developing castaway players from other teams into viable rotation guys, especially those that struggle with their jump shot prior to joining the team. Player development is such a crucial part of building a true contender for a smaller market team like the Blazers, and that is an area that they have really shined in under Stotts. This holds especially true if you're taking the route I just mentioned, potentially going with a package of younger players to replace McCollum in the backcourt. Trading for talent means nothing if you can't properly develop it, and this coaching staff has proven that they can do just that. Recent playoff history obviously doesn't bode well for the future of Stotts with the Blazers, but if you take away the last 4 games of the year, the team certainly overachieved this season in my eyes. This may be a case of a team that outperformed its talent level for 82 games, which raised our expectations of them in terms of their postseason performance, which obviously didn't go well. But the fans and media members asking for a new coach in Portland should first consider the job he has done so far, rather than just the events of the past week or so. Moving on to the other side of the league, there has been a growing sentiment among fans and media members that a healthy Philadelphia 76ers team has the best chance of representing the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals. Though obviously the series isn't over yet, it is hard not to be impressed by the play of the young Sixers against the Heat in the first round so far. Though they did lose Game 2, the shot-making ability and talent level of the roster has been on full display. Though maybe even more impressive is just how poised and composed many of their key players have been during their first ever playoff experience, especially considering the physicality of the series. With as hot as they've been, the play of young phenom Ben Simmons, and the return of a masked Joel Embiid, it begs the question, have the Sixers become the team to beat in the East? This is certainly supported by the relative struggles of the other key members of the conference throughout the first round so far, as the Celtics, Cavs, and Raptors have each proved vulnerable against their lower-seeded opponents. For me, and I'm honestly shocked to say these words out loud, but I think the 76ers have as good a chance as any team to make it out of the East and into the finals. They have the talent, poise, and confidence to make it happen, and with a healthy roster, I don't see any reason to think otherwise. Now, I want to be clear when I say this that it isn't a prediction. I'm not saying that the Sixers will make it to the finals, just that it isn't an overreaction to consider them just as serious a contender as anyone else. Obviously, the biggest obstacle in my mind is still none other than the Cavs and LeBron James, who hasn't watched the finals from home since 2010. Now, we still have to see what happens with their series as well as with Toronto's and Boston's, but I don't see a reason right now to not put Philly in that group of contenders as well. Lastly, we have the Houston Rockets, the team that I predicted a little while ago would represent the Western Conference in the NBA Finals. After losing Game 3 to the Timberwolves in convincing fashion, and with their shot making and defensive prowess from the regular season not translating to their first round series so far, a lot of people are saying that we should be seriously concerned about the viability of the Rockets as Western Conference contenders. Haven't we seen this story before? During Mike D'Antoni's tenure in Houston, they never seemed to make shots at as high of a rate in the postseason as they do in the regular season. Now, while that is true of basically every team, it holds much more significant value to the Rockets, who rely on shot making more than any other team in league history. If three-point shots aren't falling, especially from guys on the wing like Trevor Ariza and PJ Tucker, then the whole machine runs at a much slower pace. They rely on that spacing for their potent pick-and-roll attack to have the necessary room to operate, as well as to open up driving lanes for Chris Paul and James Harden. The series as a whole has been pretty ugly through 3 games, with neither team really able to get into much of a rhythm, which is pretty normal for the Timberwolves, but stands out much more when a team like the Rockets doesn't have much of a flow going offensively. But the question in Houston remains, should fans be worried? In a word, no. To me, this is an overreaction simply because it's not like the rest of the league isn't experiencing struggles of their own in the playoffs. The 1-8 matchup in the East is tightly contested. The Warriors just dropped a game to the Spurs despite looking dominant in the first 3 contests, and the only series to end in a sweep in the first round was the 3-6 matchup in the West that I talked about earlier. Would I like to see the Rockets show more energy defensively and make shots at a historic rate the way they did during the regular season? Absolutely. But a tight Game 1 and a Game 3 loss in which Minnesota made an unsustainable 15 threes does little to dissuade me from the idea that the Rockets are real contenders in the West. And that wraps up today's look at some of the most popular overreactions of this past weekend's NBA games. This is something I look forward to doing throughout the rest of the playoffs, so if you liked the video, then be sure to leave a like rating down below, and if you'd like to see more videos just like this, as well as some other lists and things like that, then be sure to subscribe to Sporting Logically for more videos every single week. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.